I'm David Vincent, and you're watching Sonic Perspectives.
No need to ponder what my being desires. Persistent longing for flesh, my only bias. Nothing quells this hunger, humanity vow. It is no safe haven, for I'm always on the prowl.
Hey everybody, this is Jonathan with Sonic Perspectives, and I am here today with the man himself, the voice of Cthulhu, the worst nightmare of Azathoth, and the man who single-handedly warded off every Wendigo with his mighty roar, David Vincent. How you doing?
I'm doing well. That was quite an introduction. Hopefully I can live up to that.
Well, so far, based on the way the voice is coming through, I think we've already accomplished that. So I'm to understand that we've got something in the works here. At about 2 months from now, a new evil is going to be unleashed upon the world. And you'll forgive me if I'm pronouncing the name wrong. Do you pronounce it Ultimus or Voltimus?
Roman U, Ultimus.
Okay, Roman U, gotcha. Yeah, well, unfortunately, an Irish guy like me, I'm a little rusty on my Roman numerals, but either way. So anyway, as somebody who has been a fan of yours for 30 years now, ever since Beavis and Butthead first mistook you for a grizzly bear, I've been longing to do this for a while, but I have to admit up front that I did not know about Ultimus until just a couple of months ago. But apparently in the 2010s it was kind of a positive decade, but there was something wicked about to march in, right?
Indeed. Well, I mean, we grow and we continue with the art. The art leads everything.
Absolutely. So to start off with, can you give us a background about how you touched base with Flo Mounier and Rune Eriksson and how this project came into being?
Sure. So some years ago, I've always was a fan of Mayhem, especially during Rune's tenure, and we played a few festivals together, and I met him, and I liked him immediately, and yeah, we just had some conversations over the years and talked about, oh, it'd be nice to maybe work together on something in the future. And you meet people and years pass, and the next conversation is, yeah, we really need to do something together. Well, fast forward several years later, and my phone rang out of the blue, and he said, hey man, what's up? And I was like, what's going on with you? What you got going on? And all the normal pleasantries. And then he said, so what are you doing? And I said, well, this is what I have going on. I said, why do you ask? He said, well, we need to, we've talked about doing something together, and are you still interested? I said, yes, let's start right now. And he goes, okay. So yeah, I was gung-ho. I've been gung-ho about working with Rune for many, many years, and that finally came to be. So really the rest is history. He had a number of things that he was kind of working on, and we got together, and the three of us, and worked through the songs, came up with Something Wicked Marches In, and then yeah, and then we continued on, did some touring for there. Obviously COVID got in the way of well, the whole world, but we're back, and we have a new record, and we're mighty proud of it.
Absolutely. And so for those who may not be in the know about this new project, because unfortunately COVID probably did screw up the promotion for the first album considerably, what are the key characteristics of this project that separate it from, say, Morbid Angel or Genitorturers or any of your other prior ventures?
Well, speaking personally, everything I do, I look at it through the lens of that particular project. Mm-hmm. So I'm only singing with this band, and it's a different approach than than what we've done in the past. But, ultimately the sum total of any art project is the individual personalities and characteristics of the individual players coming together. So this is very much that. I mean, people have told me that they hear, some similarities, but also lots of differences. So it's the recipe. I am who I am. I do what I do. And the same is true for Rune and Flo. So yes, people can hear various things that may sound familiar to them based on perhaps being listeners of our past works, and this is the culmination of how we work together.
Excellent. Yeah. And so one of the things I noticed, because I actually did have the chance to hear the upcoming album, I don't want to let too much of the cat out of the bag since it's not out yet, but one of the things that I was struck by, and this was something I'd been hoping for since way back in '93, there seemed to be a greater exploitation of your abilities as a bass vocalist, doing actual choir vocals and, mixing that into a greater frequency than I think I've heard in the past. Admittedly, I haven't heard every album you've been on, but I did notice that a fair bit. And the results were, if you'll pardon the expression, quite epic. So could you get into the recording process of doing vocal tracking and maybe clue us in on maybe how many vocal tracks you ended up doing on most of the songs or anything like that?
Well, it really starts with a dream. As we're writing, I either have like inspiration in the moment, or I have stuff that I've done over a period of time that I've archived that seems like it would be a good fit. And then sometimes I listen to it and I plug in where it feels natural to me. And so in terms of vocal tracks, I couldn't even tell you. Ordinarily, I do one main lead track. Sometimes I'll double it for a little punch in a few areas. And then I harmonize with it in certain areas to just add additional musical layers. So it's all, kind of off the cuff, as spontaneous as can be, as emotional and as honest as can be. And I keep going until either my producer says, that's really a lot. I get caught in the weeds quite a bit, and I'll keep going and going and going. And, we're all the same way. Rooney will keep adding guitar tracks until, he's at his wit's end, and when we all do that, we just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And, at the end of the day, if it's something that doesn't help the song, that's what a mute button is for. So, we get in and we pound it out.
Great. And just so I'm clear, when you're touring, you're just you're at the mic, you don't have an instrument on, but in the studio, are you doing bass in the studio, or is somebody else handling that? Actually,
so the plan was never for me to play bass live. I was going to record bass on the first record, and literally 2 days before I was meant to fly out into the studio, I got into an argument with a rattlesnake.
Ooh.
And he won. So my hand was unable to do anything. So Rooney actually played bass on the first record. And then subsequently, when we hired additional musicians to do the touring with us, one of which was a bass player and one of which is a second guitar player, both of whom are permanent members of the band now. So on this record, Ipe played bass and did quite a good job with it, I must say.
All right, great. So we got most of the inside baseball basically figured out there. Now, in terms of the songwriting, you said that basically you're just doing vocals. So who's doing most of the lyric composition for this album and the previous?
That's me as well.
Okay,
And
that's you also. Yeah.
all things vocal is me.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I was about to say, because we got some pretty distinctive poetry on here, and my first assumption was on past experience that it was you writing the lyrics, but just in case there was any confusion about that. So anyway, when it comes to any touring on the album, is there anything solidified yet, or are you actually you're not on the road right now, right?
No, not on the road right now, but we begin in March this year.
Ah, all right. And are you starting stateside? Or are you starting in Europe? Where are things going to kick off?
In Europe, well, I'm certainly hoping for some stateside stuff. We're getting that part of our portfolio in order as we speak. But yeah, we're starting in Europe in March. And I certainly hope to be able to play in my own country.
Yeah, definitely. And hopefully you'll be able to play in either Philly or New York, and that way I'll be able to catch you. Yeah. So anyway, I wanted to actually jump back a little bit and get into some of the mechanics of your vocal style. This is sort of more personal curiosity stuff, but I think it kind of dovetails with what you're doing now. Also, I'm to understand that you have actually a very rich past with music that goes back all the way to your childhood. So could you get into some of the finer points of that, like where you started from and how that kind of sort of led into where you are now?
Well, my mom tells me that I was singing along with the radio when I was 3 and 4 years old, that far back. And, sometimes music is, in my case, it's a haunting. That's all I think about. Whether I'm in the shower, whether I'm working around the ranch, no matter what I'm doing, it's always a song. And so this is a way, it's just a way I express myself. I mean, I tell stories, and they're things that are personal to me. I make them a bit more entertaining for the listener. But yeah, it's just who I am as a person. So I don't know how to really define it much deeper than that. It is what it is.
I gotcha. And then with since you're basically one of the early figures in what became known as the death metal style, do you have any memory of when you started incorporating sort of a harsher vocal sort of personality into what you were doing? And did that dovetail with you joining Morbid Angel, or was that something that went back a little earlier than that?
I would say it's a few years earlier than that. I was a fan. I've always been a fan of music, and I was always looking for, the feeling of more attack, more immediacy, more deliberate, more, dare I say, Wagnerian approach to things that feels powerful and feels strong. So that's kind of what my personality is. So it's just it's just sort of an artistic extension of my personality.
Yeah, Wagner was definitely the one that was responsible for bringing the deeper voice to the forefront. I think before then the tenors were having all the fun and the basses were just doing backup choirs. Yeah. So anyway, with regards to, because this is something that I've gotten into with previous interviews also, the death metal vocal style, it seems to have been something that kind of, it sort of spontaneously came about through a bunch of different individual vocalists. And I've heard that in most cases, you guys, even down in Florida, which was one of the hotbeds of it, you guys weren't really listening to each other that much and copying each other. There was more sort of your own thing coming in. And do you think maybe you could speak to that? I mean, you weren't listening to Glenn Benton or John Tardy or any of those other guys when you were formulating your style. It just sort of happened on its own, right?
Well, I believe I was before them, but that's neither here nor there. We in the early days of Morbid Angel, we pretty much just isolated ourselves, and we did what we did. and we weren't really necessarily, we weren't trying to copy anyone because, well, there wasn't anything to copy. There was nothing that sounded like what we were doing. And we just sort of blazed our own trail and did what we did based on what we wanted to do. So it, you know, thankfully, unfortunately, it translated and it became a thing. But again, there were a lot fewer bands back then. So the fact that of the bands that were out there, everybody was unique sort of in their own style, which is really not the case from my ears, what's happening today. There's a lot that sounds very, very similar.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. Do you have any thoughts, particularly on some of the more recent death metal vocal styles that have come about since the late '90s? The more indistinct stuff that maybe came about thanks to the influence of, even though I don't blame him for this directly, but Lord Worm, I think, may have had an impact on how a lot of modern death metal vocalists kind of enunciate or fail to enunciate their words.
Well, you know, everybody's got to do what's right for them. That's not right for me. But you know, again, you know, I don't have a lot of commentary about what other people do. I'm either a fan of it or I'm not. But that doesn't matter. I mean, that's, you know, thankfully there's enough choices out there where, you know, folks can figure out if they want to listen to this or that or what have you. So from a vocal standpoint, I wouldn't say that I'm inspired or have any influence at all from quote unquote death metal singers. I do what I do, and you know, the singers that I listen to are far and wide, but not really extreme metal.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably better that all of the criticism is left up to the critics anyway. I mean, speaking for myself as someone who's had to review a lot of modern brutal death metal albums, a lot of these vocalists are ruining a perfectly good French cheese for me. Just yeah,
wheat brie. Yeah, well, I mean, if you have something to say but you can't understand it, then why say it? If it's so unimportant that what someone is trying to say, that it's indistinguishable, then I don't know how to respond to that.
Yeah, but getting back to the early days, you know, you definitely defined your own unique sound, but there were some influences, I'm assuming, floating around. I mean, were you familiar with what Hellhammer and Possessed and those other guys were doing back in the early days? Did you encounter that before you and Morbid Angel started to further refine your sound, so to speak?
Well, I can tell you that personally, the Seven Churches Possessed record is wonderful. Just to this day, I love that record. I think Jeff did an amazing job. And you know, Hellhammer, you know, that wasn't really my flair. I did like Celtic Frost. You know, there was a few things that I heard here and there that I really picked up on. Possessed being one of them, sure.
Yeah, and there's definitely a key difference between what you do versus what Jeff or Chuck does. I kind of liken it to the difference between a very forceful Wolverine versus a mighty grizzly bear, I guess you could say. I think having a naturally deep voice helps.
You watch too much Beavis and Butthead.
I definitely do. I grew up on MTV, and when they weren't trying to Kurt Cobain me to death, they were Beavis and Buttheading me to death. Yeah. So, anyway, switching gears a little bit here, did you want to, because I don't know if anybody else has gotten into the weeds with you on this, but some of the lesser known projects that you were involved in between your two stints with Morbid Angel, such as, say, Jenna Torturers or Terrorizer, which I know is very big with the grindcore crowd. Did you have any thoughts or reflections on what you've done? And maybe you're still with Terrorizer, right? Or oh, yeah.
We have reconstituted that, and we actually have some touring coming up this year for that. So
Nice.
looking forward to that as well.
All right, excellent. So I think we've covered most of the bases here. Is there anything else that you wanted to add? Something maybe give the fans a shout out about the upcoming tour or the upcoming album or anything, any personal reflections that you've had about how things have been going of late?
Well, I'll tell you, the band Ultimus, have put lots of blood, sweat, and tears into this record. So I certainly hope people can listen to that and appreciate it. And I hope they dig it. And even if they don't, it is what it is.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, if you guys hit anywhere in the mid-Atlantic area, I think I'd even be willing to drive down to Richmond to catch you guys. Because to my eternal shame, I have yet to see you live, even though I own every Morbid Angel album you've been on.
Well, let's hope that happens. There's plans change and they get added to. I mean, we're very early in the year right now, but I do know that I have an increasingly jammed up calendar. So that's a good thing, right?
Oh yeah, always is.
Music comes first.
Absolutely, and always should. All right. Well, that pretty much concludes it for now. So David Vincent, everybody, the man, the legend, and I've been Jonathan with Sonic Perspectives. Peace out.
Thanks for your time, Jonathan.
You're welcome.